Hello and welcome to Let's Talk About It. This is Taylor, your host, and welcome to the show. I'm really excited again today. This is one of the things I love about having a podcast is that I can kind of share with y'all some of my internet friends. And I think especially throughout 2020, I really increased the amount of internet friends that I had. And I feel so incredibly blessed and grateful to have met just these beautiful, wonderful souls, these women of color who are just unapologetically themselves, these women who are really making their own paths. And I just feel so excited to share them with y'all. So today, so special. Today we have Cami with us, and Cami is a writer, hand lettering artist, and illustrator. She lives in Northern California. She's the owner and artist behind Zea Inc. Her designs often revolve around messages of social justice, mental health, and my favorite, feelings. That's right. Cami's artwork has so much to do with feelings, and I relate to all of it. Everything she posts, I'm just like, oh, wait, oh, I feel it. I feel it. I feel it. So if you are looking for, great pages, great creators and curators to follow on Instagram, I highly recommend following Cami at Zea Inc. It is all fantastic. Everything makes me feel less alone. I feel so seen. It is relatable and just really warms my heart a lot of the time. So I'm so thrilled to share her work with y'all and to get into a little bit of deeper conversation with her today. So let's get into it, y'all. Let's talk about it. All right. So welcome to the show, Cami. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. So excited to be here.
Yes. I feel like there are so many places that we will go in this episode probably. But first, I would love to share a little bit about kind of how we connected, because I feel like I had been following your work for a while. I feel like I'd been following you, and then seeing your work in other places. And I think this actually might be the first time that I'm having an artist on. I guess everyone's kind of like an artist in their own way, but there's someone that does what you do. I don't think I've ever had anyone in your position on the podcast before.
Oh, what a privilege.
Yeah.
That's so exciting.
Yeah. So maybe we could just start a little bit of you just kind of sharing the work that you do, and then we can kind of get into that a little bit more and the way that your identity shows up and all of that as well. I would love to get into, but when I talk about art and I talk about your work, that you do, how would you describe it?
Yeah, so it's classified as hand lettering. I feel like it's kind of a mix of writing that I kind of portray through hand lettering, which is just handwritten kind of font style writing. And it's mostly quote based just to keep it, social media friendly. But I do my best to pack a lot of important topics into that medium because that's what I'm about.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like you do such a good job of that where it's so succinct and concise, but there's so much in it. And that's something I super struggle with. So when I see you post things, I'm just like, oh, yeah, she really hit it on the head there.
That's a compliment because I feel like when I talk in conversation, I am the least concise person ever. So it's the one area of my life that I can just condense it down into a little one sentence thing.
Yeah. Well, and I'm wondering kind of how you feel about that because, in the words that you choose, there's a lot of conversation that can be had around that, right? There's a lot of value in that. And I'm wondering how you feel about, what you said of making it social media digestible.
There's definitely a lot of push and pull internally with that concept because, right now, social media is the tool that I have. So I want to do something good with it. And part of that is understanding kind of how the beast operates, if you will. But then there's definitely a piece of me that feels like, screw that. I don't want to be easily digestible. This is a huge conversation. This is layered. This is nuanced. This is generations of conversations, and I struggle with always needing to keep it simple. And sometimes I just kind of go off the rails and it's like a 6th grade post and it's just full of like tiny writing because, there's just a time and place for everything. And I think the beauty of running a page that isn't necessarily a business, even though I do this partially for a living, is that I can kind of make my own rules, but I do sit in a lot of tension over the idea of always having to find an easily communicated message that then is also cute. So it's appealing to look at. And then, that's why I'm excited to do something like this, to have like more of a conversation about things.
Yeah. Yeah. I struggle with that push and pull as well, in different ways, obviously, because the medium and how that shows up is a little bit different, but there is still that pressure of like, well, how do I make it cute? How do I package this in such a nice little bow so that it's, digestible for folks? And a lot of that push of like, well, you know what? It shouldn't be easily digestible. Like you should have to sit with this a little bit.
Yeah, like, racism isn't a conversation that can be summed up in a one sentence like infographic online. It's just, there's so much more than that. And, and honestly, the other side of the piece of keeping it simple and kind of general is that I think it does oftentimes leave room to be a little bit misunderstood. Like I've had people not understand the tone of like what I'm saying in a certain way. And it's not perfect, but it's what we've got right now. So we're just trying to do what we can.
Yeah,
do
definitely.
Something good with it, with this weird platform.
Yeah. And so much of, your work on social media with the letter writing is often around, mental health, social justice. And I'm wondering if that's always been the case for you.
Mental health has definitely always been like a thread that's just kind of woven through a lot of conversations, just because it's been a really big part of my life since I was like 5, even before I really understood what anxiety and like CPTSD like was. Like that's what I was experiencing and I didn't know. Social justice in the sense of like advocating for like minority communities, unfortunately is like a new conversation that I've brought online. I feel like before I would talk a lot about social justice in the form of like climate change, like caring for our planet. Like I just am a justice oriented person and I can like kind of get on kicks of like, I'm really fixated on climate change right now. Like I'm really, and so I think, sometimes I feel a little guilty whenever I go look back through my feed and I realize like, I would briefly touch on things, but it wasn't as consistent as it is now. Which is, it's just part of like growing and growth and just figuring out what you want to talk about anyway. But I think then before I kept trying to look around at what was working for people.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I just have to say whatever actually matters to me. And if it works, that's great. And if it bombs, I don't care because this is just important.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think before perhaps social justice or racial justice perhaps was not a topic that was engageable before 2020. And now the demand or the engagement in that area is much higher. And therefore then the conversation becomes that much more present. All right, I want to take a short break right here because not only do we have a very exciting new sponsor of the podcast, but I feel like this is important because it's something that I struggle with personally on a daily basis these days with the house renovation, is that first of all, food is so important to me, right? Making sure my body is nourished, making sure that I'm eating foods that are whole, that are organic, and that actually nourish my body is super important to me, like for health all over, right? From my skin health to my gut health to my mental health to my sexual health, spiritual health, all of the things, right? Feeling your best, really, in my opinion, starts with what you eat. And with everything happening with the house renovation, it's been really difficult for me to actually be enjoying healthy organic meals that I want to be eating because I feel like I have to be everywhere all the time. So I'm super excited to share with y'all Sakara, who is a nutrition company that focuses on overall wellness, starting with what you eat. And they have ready-to-eat meals that are made with powerful plant-based ingredients. I had I felt so fancy, y'all. I was like, oh, yeah, I was not going to sit down and make this myself, but I will sure eat it. It was like a truffle oil mushroom with like spinach, pasta, and the pasta was like a lentil pasta, which is my favorite. It's like definitely something that I would already want to make for myself. Just, I didn't have to make it for myself. I just had to heat it up. But literally the package came and I was like, holy crap. Like I'm literally set for the entire week with chef crafted breakfasts, lunches, dinners. It's literally all there. And they deliver it fresh to your door anywhere in the US. So literally I was like, okay, am I supposed to freeze this? Do I refrigerate it? It literally on the package says packaged the day that it was delivered. The day that it was delivered. So, I mean, along with delicious plant-rich meals, Sakara also offers daily wellness essentials like supplements and different herbal teas, all to help support your nutrition. And definitely encourage y'all to check them out because it's really helping nourish and fuel me, and I really need that these days. So right now, Sakara is offering our listeners 20% off their first order when they go to sakara.com/Taylor and enter the code Taylor at checkout. That's Sakara, sakara.com/Taylor and get 20% off your first order. Again, that's sakara.com/Taylor. Be sure to check it out. Food is not the place that you want to be, slacking in your life. You need that to nourish your body. Your body's working so hard for you. Do everything you can to nourish your body, to care for it, because you're worthy of it. You don't have to do anything to be worthy of it. Just exactly as you are right now, you got to nourish yourself and take care of your body in the best way that you can. Sakara has definitely helped me a lot to make sure that I am feeding myself and doing so in a way that is nutritional, that is organic, that is whole, not processed. So again, super excited to have them as a new sponsor of the podcast and really hope that y'all check them out. Again, that's sakara.com/Taylor. And with all of that said, we can now get right back to the show. I'm wondering if you can kind of speak a little bit to I heard you say, feeling a little bit guilty of how that wasn't maybe more present then. And I also just want to offer you some grace in that because you've had to do your own identity work in that space,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh, why not? Yeah. I mean, it's true. And I think, there's definitely so much truth and even just safety in the fact that so many people are talking about this now, because I remember very clearly when Michael Garner was murdered. And that was my first huge eye-opening thing. I mean, I grew up in the South. I grew up in South Texas, right on the border of Louisiana, very country, very kind of hits all the stereotypes of what it's like to live in a small Southern town, where, I saw very blatant racism my entire life. And it took me a really long time to realize that I would be on the receiving end of a lot of these thoughts and a lot of these, preconceived notions about groups of people and their worth in this world. But I remember speaking out on Facebook because I was, what was bigger at the time when Michael Garner was murdered. And
Eric Garner? in 2013-ish. Yeah.
Yep. Eric Garner.
Yeah. Eric Garner. Yeah. It was around the same time Michael Brown and Eric Gardner were around the same time.
Yeah. Unfortunately
There's a lot of people to keep track of.
Way too many names. It's disturbing. But anyway, that was my first online encounter with people that I loved who were close in my life, who were exposing their racism to me through my like upset and injustice, fueled posting about this situation. And it was just so shocking to me that I retreated quite a bit, because I was like, oh God, is everyone like this? Are all these people that I love like this? And then, that was a lot around the time too, whenever I started kind of understanding that I wasn't necessarily white either. Which is something you and I have talked about a lot, where it is such a strange dynamic whenever you do have a white parent. And then I have my mom is adopted. And so it's been interesting trying to figure out exactly, but a lot of her ethnicity is like, she's like very much Native American. And then she also has a lot of like Mexican and like Spanish heritage. And it's sifting through all of that. I think there's just no way that you can't come to a point where all of these injustices feel like people close to you. Like it brings some sort of connection, which it should for everyone, but I think especially people who it's like in your blood to care about it, because there's injustice in your lineage. And I think that does like inform so much of the fuel to like fight for other communities who are being oppressed and who are experiencing like racism right in front of you.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot to sift through for sure. And I mean, also having to sit with your own kind of like discovery of your racial identity is that's a whole process you've had to go through.
Yeah, it honestly took someone telling me, someone who was not white, saying, wait, you're not white, right? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I truly didn't get it, because even though my mom is not my white parent, and that's who I lived with and primarily spent all of my time around, and she's like, honestly, even much darker than me, like appears so much more, not white, than me. Like I was raised in a community where everyone looked the same.
Yeah.
And you find the little ways to fit in just enough to kind of push down things. Just not, you straighten the hair, you buy the same clothes, I made sure not to go on the sun too much. Like there was this weird kind of pass that I got, because yes, I was, brown, but I didn't speak Spanish like the other kids in my class whose parents were from Mexico. Like everyone was a little Native American was a weird thing that people said to me. Like, no, it's fine. We all are like a little Native American. And I was like, okay, because, I'm like 10 and I don't realize, what the fuck are you saying?
And it's like, no, we're really all not, because actually like white men murdered most of them.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know, Jessica, I just don't believe that your great, 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 great grandma was Cherokee. I'm sorry. I don't believe you.
Yeah.
Like,
come on, Katie. I don't think it's true.
Exactly. But then also being mad that my name wasn't Jessica.
Yeah.
Mom, why do I have this weird name? No one else is named this. My middle name starts with a Z, for Christ's sakes. Like, why'd you do that to me? And
these things that we end up hating about ourselves because it's not what we're seeing mainstream everywhere else, or in the community that we're in when it's predominantly white.
Yeah. And unpacking that realization of like, oh, right, there, like I have been avoiding and honestly just like been ignoring so much of like my own self and like my actual body and like what it looks like, because I was truly just trying to fit in, which is just very human. And I think now it's such a beautiful thing to me. Like I feel so grateful to have something so rich like inside of me and like a part of me. But it has made taking a stand or like kind of opening the door and being like, hey guys, I'm part of this too. Sometimes I feel a bit like a imposter for sure, because I'm like, I know I wasn't here my first like 25 years of life, but I would really love to not be white. So, you know, or like, I mean, I am also white, like, and also that sucks because you can't like, you know, you can't separate yourself from that either. And all of what living as someone who just got all the benefits of being white too, my entire life, my proximity to whiteness and how that protected me in so many ways. And I think just there is always that swirling inside of me, like that. Those realities, they never separate themselves and they never really go away. And it's an interesting place to feel like you kind of have your feet in two camps, you know. Because obviously it would be amazing to just be like, well, I'm not white at all, so I'm not the problem here. And I get to reject all of this bad stuff. And I'm just, you know, you fight for me kind of thing. But then also when you don't grow up with any of the culture, I think it's extra confusing because my mom was adopted by a white family in 1969, whenever California didn't even want them to do that. They wanted her to go to like a Mexican family because they didn't want a white family to adopt a brown baby.
Yeah.
And so I don't have any of the memories of culture attached to this identity. And I've just been sort of forging my own way here. And it's really beautiful and I love it, but it's a bit lonely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's even just as you're saying this, you know, I'm like, I'm so glad that you're speaking this right now, because I do think that you're right, that does sound like a very lonely experience. And I'm sure that there's someone listening who can actually relate and is like, this is what I've been experiencing. This is what I felt. And I think that that almost that imposter syndrome, right? Of like, well, I know I wasn't here then, but like I'm here now.
Yeah.
Like, I think you have to allow space for like self-compassion, for understanding that the reasons that you maybe weren't where you were at now is because you were dealing with your own internalized oppression. And that I think is a very unique experience that a lot of, you know, multiracial, mixed race people will experience. And, you know, I think I've struggled with some of that, you know, growing up with my white family as well, of feeling like, I don't think I ever felt like, you know, I just want to not be white, because I don't think, as much as I tried to make myself very close to being white, I don't think I was ever actually perceived as white. But of just trying to figure out, well, how do I still exist in this space while also not hating my whiteness, and how it's contributed to that internalized oppression? How do I, how do I allow honorable space for my whiteness as I am my coloredness, my blackness? And one thing that Mixed in America, they're a fantastic community that I love, and they've been on the podcast, but where we talked about, you know, using that privilege that we have had of our proximity to whiteness to help break those cycles of oppression. And I think that can be one of the beautiful things where we're like, well, this is actually part of our superpower, that we're not just this, but that we have the combination of both. And while it's a lot to navigate and it's very complex, you know, we have a different experience that we can bring to the table. And I think we can play a very unique role in advocacy and in change.
Yeah, that's definitely the truth that I've taken away just from this experience, and especially just all of the different conversations that I've come up with in the last year. I feel like we get like a special privilege of its own, that we get to kind of be a bridge for these two worlds, and we get to represent two worlds. And I feel like that, knowing that in me is so much of the fuel that just keeps me going and like makes me want to stay loud as much as I can, whenever I can. Cause it just is right. It's just the right thing to do. And I can feel that in me, you know?
Yeah. Even when there's that voice that's like, well, you don't really get to like be there because your ass wasn't about it. Like when that voice comes in, it's kind of like, no, you can sit in your wholeness. And I think that's, the nuanceness, maybe the complexity to kind of sift through is reaching the wholeness piece.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for other folks to actually accept that wholeness when you are those two different things.
Yeah. I mean, especially, exactly. Like, you know, most of my life I've been in white spaces, and to be honest, I'm still very much in white spaces. Like I am easily accepted into them because, you know, I'm like exotic. I don't really look for sure certain things, which is so easy to just group me in. And, but then, you know, you're like, well, you're the only one in the room who maybe is having a different experience when big conversations are coming up. And, I just feel like if there's ever been a time to solidify your role in conversations of injustice and oppression, the last year was definitely it. Yeah.
How do you find you've seen that kind of impact the work that you do with your artistry?
Well, for one, the people that I work with are in this world similarly. And I think that has been really helpful and incredible because as I'm, you know, getting to work for and with people, I'm also like taking in so much and seeing so many different experiences. And most of my clients are like Black women or BIPOC women. And it's just, that part is really cool of the opportunities that it's opened up. But I think it just, one thing that I've learned is I'm a very empathetic person. I'm also a very like socially or like justice driven person. So it's really easy for me to just get all in on like every unfortunate thing that is happening in the world.
Yes.
And so,
are you a Cancer too? I forget.
No, I'm a Libra.
Oh, okay. Balance.
Yeah, which I never have. Lots of extremes. I'm like, I thought I was supposed to be this like scale, and it's always just like this.
But it sounds like you're searching for the scale in your like justice work.
Constantly. So yeah, as far as justice work goes, it's like there have been so many things that I truly just did not have the capacity to comment on, or things that I legitimately don't know what I'm talking about if I were to say something about this, you know, like the Israel-Palestine conflict, for example. I was like,
I went all in.
Which, hey, that's great. And here's the weird thing is like, I still wanted to say something because it's like, at the end of the day, people should have a sense of safety, and they should have a sense of home. That feels so simple to me. Like, is there conflict simple? No. But can I still find something simple in the sense that it's like so long. Like, it's not like this one thing just happened and then,
Yeah.
Like, I don't want, like, don't come take people's land. Like, leave people alone. Like, don't bomb people's houses. Like, but it's just like in the moment, these topics feel so fucking daunting. Like, you're like, the issue in front of me, like, some pieces of it are so simple and some pieces of it are really confusing. Like, they're really complicated, and it's generations of conflict. And, like, it's been hard to know that there is just no way I'm not the news.
Oh, like, Lord.
And just realizing like, I've been trying to be the news, and I actually don't want to be the news, because I still need to find like ways to like tap into like reservoir of like care and energy and capacity to like be able, I don't want to just slap something down and throw it up for the sake of being on the trend and being on the topic, because, you know, what I am trying to cultivate in myself with making art that is about big topics like social justice and oppression, is that like longevity is the goal. That's the point. The point is for me to be able to sustain this kind of work for as long as I'm doing this work, because that actually is what matters to me. But if I knee-jerk respond to every single thing that comes up, I'm going to burn out, because one, I'm going to talk out of my ass and I don't know what I'm saying. I'm going to make a mess because I don't know what I'm talking about. And two, I'm going to become so exhausted because I'm trying to carry all of these messages and all of this oppression whenever I still haven't unpacked the horrible thing 5 things ago. Like what's happening around us is just way too much. And I think the weird thing that has happened in the past year is like everyone has woken up to this sort of responsibility, which is important. It's a crucial thing. We all have a role. But then it's like we're asking the wrong people to hold all the responsibility. Like we're asking influencers who like normally just post like dresses and stuff to like comment on Gaza. Like, you know, they like, or like, you know, like it's like, and even too, just this like false idea of like, well, I posted that infographic and so, or I made that thing. And so I did my job. And it's like, well, if I'm making a post on something, throwing it up on Instagram and walking away, then I have done nothing. It's, and I am a pretty reactionary person. Like I know this about myself. And so it's been a really big lesson to be like, okay, if I want to keep doing this work, which I do, I have to let myself sit with things. I have to let myself feel these things. I have to read about these things and listen about these things and not move on so quickly from them, you know? Like,
that's the really hard part about doing justice work is that there is literally injustice everywhere and in almost everything. And there's just too many things to talk about all the time. And, you know, I think like, you're right. We've been putting the responsibility on the wrong people. And I know even looking back at my stuff from last year, like, I was so fucking pissed at white influencers. I was so fucking pissed of like, I was just so annoyed. I was so hurt. I felt so upset at like, first of all, how much easier they get access and monetization and platform as being white, blonde influencers, moms, whatever. of feeling like resentment of that anyway, because it just feels very unfair and frustrating. And on top of that, of like, oh, now you give a shit. Well, where the fuck have you been? Like, what? Where I did want to I wanted to put a lot of responsibility on them. And I also had already had that responsibility on myself.
Yeah.
So I think I felt even more unfairly, like, just pissed. I was just pissed.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it's not sustainable when you see all these things happening. And then you just take into account the last year, we've still been in a fucking pandemic. Who would have ever thought in our lifetime we'd be in a goddamn pandemic? Right.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I still have like not gone anywhere.
Yeah. I have not been on a plane in over a year.
Yeah.
Like a year and a half.
If
now.
I can get there by car, like without having to stop much, I'm like not going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're navigating that safety, that safety, which is so shaken up, like not only in just like the world around you, because now it's like everyone's all germy and scary.
Yeah.
But then it's like everyone's work got ruffled, like, you know, things like that. And and
insurrection. Then, like there's just been too many things.
God.
There's too many things all at once in the last year. And I think social media heightened all of it. And like you said, it's not sustainable. And I think even my own, you know, I think I needed to be silent. Not needed to be, but I think it took me being silenced in order to sit with the amount of pressure and responsibility I was putting on myself to be the news.
Totally.
Be a educational resource to people.
Absolutely.
When it was like, actually, all I want to be able to do maybe is just fucking talk about cats and plants. Like, can I just do that and still be worthy of being able to like monetize this platform? Like how, you know, and I think even to your point of like feeling reactionary, and I think that is where like a lot of the real, like the raw shit is like you get that reactionary feeling because there's something, your gut is like telling you something. And sometimes that's something being triggered. Sometimes that's just, you know, a truth that's coming up. And I think when it comes to things that we're told are so complex and are so much more difficult, and we have to be super educated about them to have an understanding on them. I think sometimes that's a tool. That's a tool so that the folks that are in power can continue to be in power. You know, I think back when slavery was legal, slavery was legal. But there were probably a lot of folks who would still have argued, you know, around how, well, you know, this is a really complex thing. You know, we can't just like, you know, you can't just say free the slaves, you know, because there's a lot of history here that people just don't know. Like, I think there's a lot of things that oftentimes people in positions of power can say to make it seem like your everyday person can't understand it, when really it just comes down to human rights. People having access to safe and clean water, people having shelter and having the ability to leave freely and go places and live their lives. Like, I think that it just comes to like human rights issues, really. And yeah, that's like a lot of emotional, it takes a lot of heart to do like human rights justice type of work, to where you do have to kind of check in with yourself and, you know, remind yourself you're not a fucking news outlet. You are an individual woman who is like trying, I had to remind myself that like, I'm not a fucking corporation. I'm a single woman.
It's you and Lily.
I run a business. At 27, now 28 years old, you know?
Yeah.
Perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, what do I really think it's this weird balance of like knowing and believing and living as if like my one life really can make a difference. It can make an impact. Like I believe that to my core, that like what I do here with my time matters. Yeah. And then on the same note, being like, I'm only one person. Like what I do matters and I have to keep living like it. But I literally told my therapist, or my therapist had to like kind of check me and be like, okay, so your heart and like your mind are like totally in the right place. Like the way you live your life is totally important, but like you have to have a realistic expectation of what that looks like, because like I'm trying to be like AOC. She's like, okay, but like you don't have any actual power. Like you're not in a position to make any changes. Like, you know, and in a way of like, that doesn't let you off the hook, but it's just that realistic expectation of like, what can I do?
Yeah.
With my life, and then where do I have to like remove all this pressure, because I'm not an educator.
Yeah. Like
I'm not, like, I don't have any training in educating people on anything. I didn't finish college. Like, you know, like I am just a woman at home with her corgi and an iPad, and I'm just like carrying a lot. And that's literally it. Like, I'm just like upset that people aren't taken care of. That's as much as I know. And that's literally my like foundation, my like jumping point for like everything. Yeah. It's like, this feels wrong. People deserve better than this. So
it's that simple.
It really is. And that's the thing that bothers me, is I'm like what you were saying is, you're like, it actually, like with the whole, I know I mentioned earlier, Israel-Palestine conflict, too complicated or whatever. Then the more I thought about it, I was like, I don't know, man, this is kind of fucked up. It feels like, why can't people just live in a home and be safe? Yeah. That feels weird that they couldn't. Yeah. You know, like, because most of the time when you boil all these topics down, it really does come down to like, people deserve to be safe. People deserve to have the bare minimum things that they need to survive and be okay in this world. Yeah. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, well, I have a lot to say then.
And I
this
think
is true.
Yeah. And I think to your point, like, yes, you may not have educational training, but I do think we can all learn from each other. Absolutely. You know, I do think that there are ways that we can show up in our truth and our authenticity and in our hearts that can make an impact for people and that can change things. And I think even in my own reflection of, you know, doing this kind of work, it's like social media is a whole beast on its own. And then I'm like, oh yeah. And I'm a fucking therapist and I do things that like help people. And of like, I'm putting all this pressure on myself to do all this stuff on social media, where I think, you know, kind of to what we were saying at the beginning of like making things digestible. And like, I don't always think that Instagram is actually the space to have these conversations, like you said, where it's like nice to actually have it here. Yeah, right. Because that space, I don't think allows for some of that discomfort that gets brought up to actually be processed. It just gets fucking like projected out on everywhere. And it's not productive. Well, even just like I said earlier, like tone, you have no idea how someone is actually saying something to you. Yeah. Like the amount of times in last year that someone has been offended by something that I said. And I was like, we're saying the same thing. Like I'm with you, you know, kind of thing of just being like what I have this whole thing of like, stay soft. Like, it's just, and it's like, for me, it's my message for me of like, my tendency is to like harden up and wall up and like, it's like a trauma response that I have where I'm like, everything get away from me. You can't touch me. And so I'm like, for me to do this work, there is a level of like, I have to stay tender to all of these things. I have to remember that there are people on the other side of these topics. Like, that's how I stay engaged. And someone was like, well, I'm mad. I'm not going to be soft. And I'm like, God, what are you hearing? You know, like, it's just like, okay. Well,
you know.
I'm glad that you brought up the softness piece, because I was going to ask you about that of, you know, what staying soft like means for you. And I think, you know, I can already see the whole dynamic playing out as you just say it there, because I think that is actually what comes up as like our own internal battle a little bit of like, wanting to protect yourself, right? Wanting to like be these women that are like, we're going to fight patriarchy. We're going to fight racism. And like, we're going to like, no, you can't get to me. But at the same time being like, well, hold up, wait, I have feelings. I'm a human. I am not just like this fighting robot who's going to break down all these systems. Like perspective, again, I'm an individual person. I'm also worthy and have tenderness and love in me that I can share and make space for. I don't know if you follow Latina Rebels or Priska, but she just came on the podcast and has a book. It's all dear to all the brown girls with sharp edges. And we were just talking about this too, where it's like, these sharp edges are like our trauma responses coming out, and of like, we have tenderness, and why the fuck can't we be tender?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, I paid a lot of money to get to a place where I could be tender. God, I invested so many hours and years in therapy because my go-to response before was like, fuck the world, fuck everybody. I'm just a bad ass and you can't touch me and you can't hurt me. But then also my level of care and investment in things like this was just zero. I couldn't because I was spending all of my energy on being untouchable. And I fought so hard to be emotional and soft and tender. But I mean, let that not be mistaken for not being able to throw some bows if I need to. My God, like, don't come after my people. I will fight you forever. Like, you know, like, I don't get tired fast. Like,
you got stamina, you got endurance.
I was like, okay, let's go. Like, well, yeah, because you're not trading one for the other. Like, they both have such a good purpose. Like, yes, like I get most of my emotions like begin with being so mad, being angry because injustice pisses me the fuck off. Yeah. Like, as it should. It's horrible. Yeah. And I use that so much as steam to like move forward and get it going. But then it's the softness that keeps me in the feeling. It's the softness that keeps me in the work, if you will, because I can't be motivated on like fury alone. Yeah. Because it is a fleeting feeling. Like you can be angry and then be happy like so quickly. But if I just like get really, really down to like the core feeling of things, it's like, it hurts my insides to know that people aren't okay and that there's shit we can do about it. Like that hurts me because it's wrong. Yeah. So yeah, softness is not absent of fight. It's not absent of, anger. It's just like adjacent. Yeah. It's just with it. It's hand in hand. You have to have both. If I'm just crying all the time about everything, I'm never going to get anything done. I mean, same. I'm crying all the time, but I have to like sharp edges. Yes, it makes so much sense.
Yeah. Well, I think too, it's letting ourselves flow through the emotions. Like our emotions have a beginning, a middle, and an end. We let ourselves go through it. Sometimes it's more of a bumpy ride than we expect or we want or we feel we can handle. But I love what you said that it's, that softness is not absent of the fight or of the anger. And I think, again, that's where it's really hard for us sometimes to accept the and. And I think that's really hard to get across on social media because God forbid if I say, I really love apples, I'm going to get 10 comments. Well, but what about oranges? Well,
so did you know that? So you hate bananas. Good to know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, did you know that oranges are doing this thing right now? It's like, what? I was talking about the fucking apples. Let me talk about the apples and then we'll get to the oranges. If I decide I want to get to the fucking oranges.
Yeah. If I even bought any oranges at the store, okay? Like,
yeah. It's like the presence of this one thing does not mean that we do not care about any of these other things. Right. It does not mean that, there isn't space for anything else as well. And I think that and piece is just really hard to convey, but I think there's so much power in that softness. And I think I so let that get away from me this whole last year. And like you said, it's like at the core of some of that anger is just sadness and feeling hurt.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I think I've just been really, really hurt, and I've just been really sad.
Yeah. I mean, like, of course, like,
Yeah.
one, like, you know, when you feel like your communities are being attacked, then like, I think it's just so human to find your defense mechanisms and find whatever things make you feel safe in that moment. And, you know, being like angry or holding on to resentment, or, you know, like those things, like it does feel really nice. Like it feels really good, honestly, to be like upset at everyone. And I think that, or like, it doesn't feel good to be upset at everyone.
It feels good to like allow yourself to feel
like,
that. And
yeah, well, because what you're really saying is like help me. Like, do you care about me? Like, you know, like be in this with me, because I feel alone in this when you're not. Like, of course. It feels.
Oh, he really just hit me there. Now I feel like I'm gonna cry because I'm triggered now. Literally, I'm like grieving friendship, and I'm like, oh, that literally is all of what I wish I could say, and exactly how I felt and what was happening. And it was like, please, don't you see I'm hurting? Won't you like hold this space with me, or like be like help, please, and just
do something. Yeah. I mean, but I think that we're kind of all screaming that at someone, right? Like I feel very helpless so many times with like government, you know? Yeah. Like I'm like, you can literally fix so much right now. Like,
and that's where,
you know, it's
why did I even bother energy at white influencers when I just could have put that towards government officials?
Yeah.
Which I feel I did at some points, but yeah, I think that point you said too, putting the energy at the wrong people, the responsibility is so true. There is some responsibility there, but like not really where we need to be focusing.
Yeah. I mean, but I think like it is very fair to want the people that you love and that are in your life to be fighting for you and with you. Like, I do think that is like a non-negotiable thing.
And it just happens that some of those people in my life also happen to have platforms and are white.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's like, but I mean, it's this weird thing. Like, I've had conversations about this in the last year of like, I do think that people with platforms have a responsibility. Like, I don't think all the responsibility is yours, but I do think like, and maybe it's just looking at it differently because I'm not doing Instagram as a job. Like, it's not my job. I'm just like, I have like a, you know, small audience and whatever. And like, or, you know, but in my mind, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, you have a voice, you have a platform, people seem to listen to what you have to say. Like, it feels natural to me that you would have at least some of these conversations and like.
But see, the people that we're even thinking about in this, they haven't ever had to confront these things in the first place. So that's why it's not things that they talk about, because it's just not a part of their lives or their communities. And I mean, at least for majority of white influencers that I'm thinking. And to that, even oftentimes folks are just punished when they do. They lose followers, they lose engagement. And when it's their brand, then it's like, I can't go there because then I'm losing people. It's all kinds of fucked up.
Yeah.
You look like you're having some feelings over there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just like, I don't know. I don't have anyone coming to my job and fucking with it. So for what I'm saying. So I don't feel like it's very fair of me to like, you know, make judgments about how that would feel, because that is very scary to have your livelihood feel in jeopardy. Like, I can have some compassion for that for sure. I just think, I don't know, to say nothing. That's just not good enough for me.
Yeah.
But I also don't follow a lot of big white influencers or big, like large, large platforms or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't anymore. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, I don't know. It's just a weird world. It's just such a weird world to be doing anything in an online capacity at all, because
I agree.
Yeah, it's just such a tiny sliver of reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And,
it is.
It does so much good and then also not at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I really want you to share a bit of how you have grounded yourself in reality over the last year, and one of the ways that you've been caring and nourishing your heart and your soul with farming.
Yes. So I live in Northern California, and I call it a farm because there are like so many chickens. There's like a Australian Shepherd, and then there's like a big sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I always call it a goat, but it's actually a sheep. So it's a farm to me because I grew up with like a cat or a dog, and I like never had chickens running around kind of thing. But primarily I'm learning how to garden, which is like truly been the most just grounding, peaceful thing. Like, yeah, I call them my like opposite parents, because I have like a white dad, a brown mom, and then it's like a Mexican guy, and then like his wife is white, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like the other end if my parents were reversed. And so even just like that relationship honestly has been like very healing in and of itself. Just feeling very validated by someone in so many different identity ways, but just the actual work of tending to something outside of myself, like literally using my hands, like getting dirty and like seeing something grow, like watching it, and even just for the sake of it being like slow moving and like needing a lot of care, and like just the reward of like watching something good happening in front of you. I think that like gardening itself, or like farming in general, is just kind of this like act of hope, because you're just you're putting something out there, and you're like, I'm trusting that something good is going to come from this.
Like, I hope it'll grow something.
You're just like, okay, so this is going to be a tomato one day. Like, I don't know. It's just, it just feels so whole to like be doing this type of work, this like slow work, this like actual labor, even that is like really hard. And just the connection to nature in this way is just like so spiritual and like so peaceful. And it just, I honestly feel very connected to like the heritage, like it just feels like I'm connecting with like my people in a way, to like be in relationship with the earth like this. And even that is just like, it just does so much more for me than I really thought it could. I feel like so many big feelings about gardening. Like I didn't think I would, but it is truly like one of the best things that I've done for myself in the last year.
It's a magical thing that we grow food. Like, just people don't think about that. We're so disconnected from it, going to a grocery store. But
totally.
Oh my gosh, you watch a tomato change colors, and you watch the lettuce get bigger, and you watch the little beet leaves start to grow, and then like, holy shit, underneath here's a whole beet. And it's so magical and exciting, and just like science. Wild.
It's wild. Absolutely wild. It really is. I'm just like, holy shit, it worked.
Yes.
Like it actually works. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's, when I saw that you're doing that, I was like, oh, I'm so happy she's out there on a farm. Like, it's so exciting. And I think it is so grounding, having your hands in dirt and, just being connected to the ground, literally, because so often when we are on social media and when we are engaged with the news, you just sometimes feel like you're just spiraling in space, just flicking around from corner to corner, like, oh, go over here. Oh, no, but there's a thing over here. Oh, but there's this other thing over here. And it is exhausting and overwhelming. And just that peacefulness, just that simplicity, while there's like a ton of fucking microorganisms at play, just the simplicity of the plant, the soil, the sun, the water, and just being present in all of it, I think is an amazing way to like nourish yourself and make sure that you are like going to be sustainable to be able to do justice type of work.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm outside and I can like feel the sun and I can like hear birds chirping and I can like think a real thought for the first time in how fucking long, like you're just like, wow, this is living, isn't it? Like, you're just like, every time I'm there, I want to just stay on the property for a while because even just the actual space, like what a pandemic has done to our brains and bodies of like, I also live in an apartment. So it's like, I have no yard and like, even just the literal space of it all is so refreshing. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like outside of my house in a way that feels safe. And also it's like giving me so much life to be here. And then on top of that, there are like two beautiful, wonderful people doing amazing things. And like, I just think farmers in general are just such important people, like for so many reasons, but even just like their heart, like the people that I go help, like they give so much away to like mutual aid and like they are even donating their land to the local tribe whenever they're gone. It's like in their will, like they're like giving their land to the tribe to like take over. And like, I don't know. It's just really good. Good work.
I'm so happy that you found them and that you have them.
Me too.
Yeah. I'm wondering what kind of, I think that that's like a great suggestion for folks. But, if you were to kind of give any advice to artists who are working online, who are working in justice space, even, or even I guess just for folks who feel this like really heavy responsibility to be speaking out online around justice work, any kind of advice that you would want to give?
Yeah. I mean, I would just encourage anyone who is wanting to be in this for the long haul to remember that like it's a daily thing. Like you're taking it day by day and find as many avenues as possible to like nourish yourself and connect to peace and like center yourself, because you won't make it if you don't. And like we need people in this with longevity, intact, and caring for yourself through this, even though that feels so counterproductive. Like slowing down and like really nourishing yourself is the key.
It's necessary. Yeah. Well, I'm so happy to know you. Honestly. Honestly.
Yes, you've been a great surprise.
Yeah, it's been really, really beautiful knowing you, and even just hearing, you speak on all of this. I think it's like really important to share our truths like this and to do so unapologetically. I think, is hard sometimes, but like really fucking important. I would love for you to share kind of like where people can find you. Definitely got to follow you on Instagram, and that'll be linked in the episode notes. But any places where people can support you. I mean, you've got stickers, you've got shirts and like sweaters and everything now, like all the things.
Doing all the things. Yes. Yeah. So I'm on Instagram. It's Zea Inc. Zeaink. I have a website attached as like a little print shop, and I've been partnering with Self Cares for Everyone. They're a mental health based platform. And I did like a whole line of like shirts, tees, tanks,
I love that you did that with them.
They really are the best. Mm-hmm. It's so fun. Yeah. Yeah. So thanks. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thank you. All right. That does it for today's episode. Thank you so much for making it all the way through and keeping your ears, your hearts, and your minds open. It would mean so much to me if you could take a second or two after listening to this episode to leave a review on iTunes and let me know what you're enjoying about the show. I love reading, what your favorite episodes are, where you guys listen, and definitely feel free to share this with a friend. I mean, part of how we break down the stigmas around these topics is by talking about them, right? And sharing them with more people. So definitely share the podcast. And again, really wanting to include all of you in this podcast. So if you have questions or you want to share a thought or an experience, please send in a voice memo to ask.letstalkaboutit@gmail.com. And I'm really excited to keep having these conversations and breaking down these stigmas. So thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time.